or you can watch us live on your smart TV, on the Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now on Fanbase and Blue Sky. Search for WCEG and subscribe on all social media platforms. I am Vincent Cheeks, your host of Conversations in Education for the next hour. Make sure you download our free WCEG mobile apps. You can also say, hey, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. And last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and the guests, and not WCEG Network. And as always, thank you for your continued support. Okay, I'm going to make a couple of brief announcements, and then we're going to dive right into our interview with my guest today. First, I would like to say congratulations to the Kaumba Storytellers of Georgia for their historic Black Portraits event that they had on Sunday. It was absolutely wonderful. All the storytellers did an amazing job. So if you missed it this year, please make sure you catch it next year. Also, Kaumba we're celebrating our 30 years of being around. So we're celebrating 30 years of telling it well in the ATL. So shout out to the Kaumba storytellers. I want to mention all the names of the storytellers from yesterday, who were Renee Spratling, Deborah Strayhorn, Christine Arenze Samuel, Jarrell Allen Smith, Gloria Elder, Al Wiseman, and Denise Chapman Acosta. Congratulations once again. Everyone did a fabulous job, put together very well. So everyone who had a hand in making that production happen, thank you very much. Also, the Southview Cemetery is going to be having a women's tour coming up next March. I'm going to have a guest, Miss Winifred Hemphill. She's going to give us more information about that as the interview goes along. And last but not least, we are preparing for the KLG Variety Showcase, which will be held July 19th of this year. And it will be at 4055 Flat Shoals Road in Union City at the Gladys S. Dinner South Fulton Library. We have a couple of auditions that are going to be coming up really soon. They're going to be March 22nd from 2 to 5:30 p.m. March 22nd, March 29th, April 5th, April 12th, May 10th, May 17th, June 14th, June 21st, and July the 12th would be the dress final rehearsal before the program on July the 19th. So please, if you know of any talented youth that are interested in showcasing their talent, this is a great opportunity. It's at a small venue, so it won't be a very large audience, but it is a nice size crowd, and it's an excellent opportunity for young people to get a start in showcasing their talents to the public. So once again, KLG Variety Showcase coming up July 19th, 2025. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce my guest. She is Mrs. Winifred Hemphill. She currently serves as the president of Southview Cemetery, which is one of the oldest cemeteries in Atlanta, and she'll give us plenty of information on its history. In 2004, Mrs. Hemphill spearheaded the creation of the historic Southview Preservation Foundation, a 501c3 organization. And Ms. Hemphill also graduated. She's a graduate of Howard University and Howard University School of Law, where she practiced law for 20 years before moving into her current role. She is married to Dana A. Hemphill, and they have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Welcome to the show, Mrs. Hemphill.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad to have you here. How are you today?
I'm very well. How about you?
I am excellent. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I know that you are going to give us excellent information on this little known secret of Atlanta here called Southview Cemetery. So first and foremost, can you please tell our listening audience what is Southview Cemetery, where it is, how old it is and why this cemetery is important.
Okay, great. Southview Cemetery has been here since 1886. We are on the corner, well, we are on Jonesboro Road in southeast Atlanta in the Lakewood Heights community.
Okay.
We started out in 1886 as a 25-acre cemetery. It was started by 6 men who were all born enslaved. One of those 6 men was my great grandfather, and he was born enslaved in Athens, Georgia. And when slavery ended, he was in his 20s. He and his wife and his parents matriculated to Atlanta, and they owned a grocery store in Summerhill on Fraser Street in Atlanta. And so that
Really?
was kind of the beginning of my heritage being in Atlanta. But both his parents passed about 5 years before he started the cemetery or was part of the founding of the cemetery. And one of his parents, his mother died in 1880 and she was buried in Oakland. And
Okay.
his father died in 1883 and was buried in an area they publicized at Westview as being perpetual care for African Americans.
Okay.
No one knows where either plot is. They
Oh
don't.
wow.
Yeah. So I think that he had a difficult time with both of those cemeteries in burying his parents.
Yeah, okay.
And he called together some of the black businessmen in Atlanta, and they met in the basement of Friendship Baptist Church, and they discussed that their community needed a burial place where they could have dignity. And so the oral history is that they went to one of those cemeteries, I don't know which one, and asked, can we come in through the front gate? Do we have to be buried in the swamps? And
Right.
they were told they had to. They weren't going to change their policies.
Wow. Uh, I think that's pretty amazing that your family cemetery is birthed out of the same reason that so many other Black organizations are birthed from,
Mhm.
which is racism and exclusion,
Mhm.
basically. And so
Yeah,
you
and
go ahead.
that's what our community did. They couldn't get the kind of service they wanted somewhere else, and they had to create their own. And so they created a stockholder corporation,
Okay.
and they sold shares of stock to raise the money for the original acreage. And so the original 25 acres on Jonesboro Road at that time was a farm.
Okay.
And they purchased the farm, and then they tried to get the farm chartered as a cemetery. And
Okay.
so prior to being chartered, a black infant had passed, and they buried the black infant on the property. And so when the investigators went out from the state of Georgia to ask the neighboring farms if they had any opposition to this being a cemetery that was geared toward African Americans, they said, "Oh, no, 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 they already tainted that ground. That ground's already tainted. They buried a black baby there." So it worked in our favor. We were chartered on April 21st, 1886. So this year we will be 139 years old.
Wow. 139 years. That is absolutely amazing. Congratulations to you and your family.
It is amazing. Yeah.
It is. It
For
is.
all of that 139 years, there's been somebody from the Watts family, which is my maiden name, um, in charge of the cemetery or working at
Okay.
the cemetery.
That is fascinating. And you said it started as 25 acres initially. How big is it now?
We've grown to over 100 acres.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we have over 80,000 people buried here.
That was gonna be my next question. That's a, that's a pretty large cemetery.
It is. Yeah.
And is it true? I heard you have a book of the records of all the names of people buried there, or most of them.
Yes, they kept very good records from the very beginning about who's buried here and where they're buried. Once someone is in the ground, it's hard to tell where they are.
Right.
But we have always historically kept great records so that we can find everybody that's here.
Okay. So that's interesting. That out of necessity, if you will, that was it your grandfather,
No, it's my great grandfather.
your great grandfather?
Yeah.
He gathered some other people together, and they went in to get this community necessity together. And I think that it's even amazing how it speaks to the collaborative effort that
Mhm.
went into making this cemetery happen. That is absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. So, how were they able to do that during the period right after slavery when Negroes had little to no money?
Right. It was during Reconstruction period,
Okay,
or just after Reconstruction. My great grandfather had a grocery store, and there were five other men who we've traced as all been born in slavery: Jacob McKinley, George Graham, Robert Grant, Charles Morgan, and John Render were
okay,
all the five. The six of them are named on the charter documents.
okay,
But they were all businessmen in Atlanta. They had some sort of business. Some had blacksmith business. One, George Graham, was actually one of the first city councilmen, black city council people in the legislature in Georgia.
okay,
So they were people who had some means, and they were investing in things across Atlanta. And I think that it's so rich history that they decided to start a stockholder corporation so that others could buy shares of stock. There was, Alonzo Herndon was a millionaire at this period, and he was a contributor, and he bought shares of stock in the cemetery as well. So
okay,
they sold shares of stock to other people in the black community, and it's still a stockholder corporation. Those shares of stock have passed down to the generations like mine.
okay. And you just
Yeah.
mentioned Alonzo Herndon and him being
Uh-huh.
a millionaire. Did you know he was the first black millionaire in the city?
Yeah, I do.
So, for conversation and education listeners, you're getting a lot of rich history here.
Yeah.
Okay, because Alonzo Herndon was the first black millionaire in the city
Mhm.
of Atlanta. And
Yeah. So people weren't doing that well, especially by today's standards, but there were some educated black people in Atlanta who were thinking about the community and trying to make sure that our community continued to excel and succeed.
right.
And so these people were interested in having a cemetery in our community.
Okay. And so, um, we have a question. Um, how would shareholders be a part of the cemetery today?
How would shareholders, say it again?
How would shareholders be a part today of the cemetery?
Oh, the shareholders make the decisions about the cemetery. So we have a board of directors, and it's elected from the shareholders. And the board of directors meets quarterly, and the shareholders contribute. So
Okay.
any big decisions that occur with the cemetery, people think because I'm the president, I own it. I don't own it. I work here. It's definitely in my heritage, and I own a share of stock. But we have a board of directors, and it functions as a stockholder corporation.
Okay. And to be clear, the other five founding members, because it was six total, right?
There were six
Outside of
total.
your great grandfather, the other five members you are not related to, right?
Are not what?
You're not related to the other five members.
No, I'm not related to other five members.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so how does it feel for you to be in the bloodline of such a long and enduring legacy?
It's amazing. It's also an awesome responsibility to have all of this community have buried their loved ones here, and the responsibility for maintaining those graves so that when they come and visit, that you're not hindering them more. So when I go visit my grandmother who's buried here and helped raise me, she passed when I was 13. I
Okay.
want everybody's mom's grave, loved one's grave, to look like I want her grave to look when I go visit her grave.
Right.
So, it's not just a job. It's not just an entity. I work here. My cousin works here. Her grandfather ran the cemetery all during the civil rights movement, and it's my uncle.
Okay.
We both have other family members that work here. My son works here periodically, but it's a calling. I really believe that this was not what I had planned for my life. Like you said, I was a lawyer practicing law here in Atlanta for 20 years.
Okay.
And I think if you had said to me when I was 27, you're going to run the cemetery, I would have just been, what? But when they needed me at the cemetery, I was more than willing to go, and it really combined all of my training. It's the hardest job I've ever had, but I really think that it's the most important job I've ever had too.
Hmm. Okay, so what makes the position of president of Southview Cemetery so challenging, so hard?
Well, as a lawyer, I would take your legal issue, I would fix it or advise you on it. I give it back to you.
Right.
So now I'm the one that they're giving it back to.
Okay.
But it's a business. So all of the opportunities and challenges you have running a business, and then the fact that it's a business is so emotional. You're burying your
Oh,
loved one.
right.
So you really have to understand that families are grieving and accept the way that they grieve. Some are sad grievers, some are distant grievers, some are mean grievers.
Mm.
And you just have to understand that when they may lash out at you about something, that it's not really them.
Right.
They're upset because they lost someone, and death is so final. You know, I feel my heartstrings go out for anybody who's sitting across the table from me because I
Yeah.
know I'm the last person that they want to be sitting in front of the table of.
Right.
So that presents a challenge too.
And so you just mentioned how, I guess, emotional of a position you can be in a lot of the time, dealing with so many different people who are going through their own different emotional um,
Hmm.
stresses. How do you kind of, I guess, stay balanced yourself and stay mentally stable and don't let all of that weigh on you too heavy?
Like I said, it's a calling, and sometimes it does weigh on me. Sometimes I see a family that's very much like my family, and I, relate to them like any
Yeah.
mom would. Um, but for the most part, I try to give them the best that I can offer. I try to make it as easy and clean as it can be. We try to
Okay.
keep the decisions here, not 24 decisions that you have to make when you sit down at the table, but something that the decision for your family, and try to make it as easy as possible. And we try to listen carefully to what the family wants.
That's important. And
It
not
is.
just treat people like they're a number and
Right.
just want their money to put their loved one in the ground. Just
Yeah.
no,
Right. We try to each family is different, and
absolutely.
you really try to adjust to what that family wants and listen to that family's needs, and then
Okay.
show 'em what you have to offer.
Okay. Now, are there only African Americans buried at Southview?
No, anybody could be buried at Southview, but there are very few cemeteries that are owned and operated by African Americans, especially historically. So we are the oldest owned and operated cemetery by and for African Americans
Okay.
in the Southeast, and we are doing our research. It may be larger than that. One more caveat to that is continually operating. So there were
Okay.
some other black cemeteries. There was one in Tennessee in particular, but they stopped operating during the Depression,
Okay.
and so we continued to operate during the Depression.
Okay. And so, well, are there, being that it is a historically black cemetery, do you get a lot of white people coming wanting to be buried there?
No, not a lot, but I'd say 5%, maybe 3%.
Okay.
There have been several black men or white men that were married to black women, and the couple wanted to be buried here.
Okay.
I was in our historic area, and there's a big monument that has Greek writing on it. And so we did some some research about what the Greek writing said and who is the last name is, I think, Papadopoulos.
Okay.
And so finally someone came in the office and wanted to find that grave. And I was like, oh, tell me about why you're looking for this grave. And it was their grandmother's grave site.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was from Atlanta, moved to New York, married a Greek man, had
Okay.
babies with this Greek man. And when she passed, she had told him she wanted to come back to Atlanta to be buried in Southview Cemetery.
Okay.
And so he brought her back here, and that's their family gravesite.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So, people here, we've got people who have Jewish symbols on there. We have lots of different faiths. We have Muslims buried here. We have
Okay.
Baha'i, different forms of Christianity as well.
Okay.
So,
All right. So I also read that Southview is the oldest African American what's the word?
eleemosynary.
Eleemosynary corporation in the country. What exactly does that mean? I want to spell that for our listeners because we learn
Um,
time here.
non-eleemosynary really means for profit. So,
Okay.
if you compare our length of existence with churches, churches aren't for profit. So
Correct.
it's really the oldest business, you could put it that way, in the Southeast that's been continually operating, that's owned by Black people.
Non-eleemosynary.
Yeah,
NON-ELEEMOSYNARY. Non-eleemosynary.
there you go.
Feel like I'm on a spelling bee.
Gonna be a
but,
test at the end, so cover the word.
but thank you for that education, and thank you for all of this wonderful information that you're giving us about Southview Cemetery, which is a historically Black cemetery. We need to know this information in general, but especially because it's Black History Month. We need to be educating our people in our community about some of these hidden gems, if you will, that we don't know about in our communities. Because I can tell you right now, I lived here for 21 years, and I never heard of Southview Cemetery until I moved back to Florida. So,
Well, I'm glad that you finally heard of us.
yes, yes, and it was an honor to meet you, and to be in the production that you all did in September about the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre. And
And
so
you did an excellent job too.
thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. It was fun. It was fun, and it was really interesting just learning this history that I felt like because I had lived here so long, I would think I would hear something about this historic cemetery because of Atlanta's rich uh, history in general, especially with civil rights and all of that stuff. I would think this cemetery needs to be held in a conversation as important as that, as important as the civil rights, even because this is history. Like it's history. It's
It
just so
is.
much rich history.
Cemeteries have kind of a stigma against them. People only want to come back to visit their loved ones who are here, or, cemeteries are emotional.
Yeah,
So especially in our community, it's hard to get people to come back out to learn about the people who are buried here other than their loved ones.
yeah.
So everything that's happened in Atlanta since 1886, or before that actually, is reflected in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And it's a repository for history that we need to learn how to utilize. And so Southview, the Historic Southview Preservation Foundation, has at least 2 tours a year.
Yeah.
And one you participated in, it was about the 1906 Race Massacre. We have some of the people who perished in the massacre buried here. We have
Okay.
other people, like you portrayed, the David T. Howard, who has
Yeah.
a school named after him in
Yeah.
Atlanta, but who was a mortician during that period. And most of what was in your script were things that he really said, things that he saw and communicated that he saw.
Yeah, it was David T. Howard was an undertaker. Um, and he was really instrumental in getting weapons to Brownsville, him and Postmaster Price, uh,
Hmm.
which ultimately led to him fighting off the mob that was going from Black City to Black City, just wreaking havoc, causing chaos and murder along
Hmm.
the way. So yeah, we'll you know what? I don't think we're gonna have a lot of time to get into the Atlanta Race Massacre today. But whenever you're available again, I would love to have you to go into a deep dive about the Atlanta Race Massacre because that's one of those Black Wall Street stories, Rosewood, Florida stories. You mentioned earlier when we were off air, you mentioned Wilmington, North
Going to the
Carolina.
right.
Like there are so many uh, black towns and cities that have the same history as Atlanta with these race massacres, all of this stuff. And I just think that we need to have a lot more time to discuss
Right.
those type of events. But for right now, I am immersed in learning as much as I can about Southview Cemetery, this historic black cemetery that has such a, would you just call it a rich repository of history?
It is.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit more. So I know you mentioned before there are a lot of famous people or people who were well known in the city of Atlanta who helped build it. Who are some of the famous people that are
I
buried?
guess most recently, Hank Aaron is buried here.
Okay,
Home Run King.
Homeland King, yes.
Yeah. We have Congressman John Lewis is buried here as well.
Okay,
He passed, maybe it's been 5 years ago now. In
yeah, that,
1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was buried here after they came from his services at Morehouse College in Ebenezer. He was in the mule-drawn carriage that came to Southview, and he was
okay,
buried here.
okay,
In the early writings, Coretta wanted to establish a Center for Nonviolence in his name near his birth home. And so
okay,
as she pulled that together, which became the King Center, they
okay.
moved him to the Reflecting Pond in the King Center.
How long was he at Southview before they moved?
About 2 years, yeah,
Okay,
from 68 to 70, and then they moved him. In the same crypt where he was now are his mother and father. So Daddy King and Alberta King are buried in the same crypt that Martin Luther King was in when he was here.
okay.
And
That,
since then, of course, his sister and her husband have passed. Dr. Willie Christine Ferris, King Ferris, is here
okay.
with her husband, and his brother is also buried here with many of his family members.
Oh, he has a lot of family buried.
Yep, there are a lot of King family members buried at Southview. We also have John Wesley Dobbs, who's buried here. He was the grandfather of Maynard Jackson.
Is it a school named after him also?
There's a school named after Maynard Jackson. There's a street named after John Wesley Dobbs.
Okay, okay. I know these names.
Right. Yeah.
Oh
There are 22 people buried here who have or had Atlanta public schools named in their honor.
wow. Okay. That's pretty
So,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. David T. Howard used to be a high school as well as Price. You mentioned the postmaster.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he had a school also.
Yeah, it's a middle school now, but they have a strong alumni group. Um, Bishop Henry McNeil Turner is buried here, and Turner High School was named in his honor.
Okay. That's a
Both
lot.
Harper and Archer are buried here. There's a middle school named Usher. It's named after Basiline Usher and someone else. I can't remember the other
Okay,
name.
not Usher Raymond, the singer.
Yeah.
We don't want to confuse nobody out there.
No.
Okay. All right. And someone put in here Bishop James Morton is buried there.
That's right.
Dr. R. White. Okay.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of rappers buried here too. Uh,
Really? You're a rapper.
but just recently, DJ Unk was buried here. He died this
Oh, I
month.
remember DJ. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Back Row Fresh was buried here. It's been
I remember
about five or six
Bankroll
years
Fresh
ago.
when he died. He was a huge. He was huge in Atlanta.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
lots of people from all walks of life. And we like to say those people are known, well known across the country or maybe around the world. But
Yeah.
there's so many people here, like my grandma, she's not well known by anybody but me. But she means a lot to me. So I
Right.
know that
Yeah.
there are lots of people buried here like that.
Okay.
It would mean a lot to their family and may not be, known across the world.
Yeah. Okay. Um. I also read that Southview was the 23rd recipient of the Bench by the Road awarded by the Toni Morrison Society. What does that award represent?
So Toni Morrison was a wonderful writer and author, and in one of her books, this was before they built the African American Museum in Washington. But in
Okay.
one of her books, she said there was no place to honor the Africans that died on their way here in the bottom of those vessels. There was no place to remember the Africans that came here and survived slavery or died during slavery. There was nowhere to remember basically our history. And so she created a society that would go around and place a bench by the side of the road in places that were significant in Black history. So we
Okay.
were very proud and honored to have a bench. There's to be a book about the first 25 benches that were placed.
Okay.
They are all over the country, and I believe some outside of the United States, where she thought that someone would go and sit and read a book and remember. And so we have a bench by the side of the road, and it's really a nice little place where people do come and sit and remember.
Is it when you first come into the cemetery?
It is when you first come in the gates, it's on the left.
On the left. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that bitch. I didn't know that was what it represented.
Yeah, that's what's there.
Okay, that's excellent. And so you mentioned earlier that the cemetery is it's a business and it's a for-profit business. So how can someone contact you if they need any burial services from you all?
Yeah, we have a website. We have a telephone number. We are at 404 We encourage people to pre-need so that you come in and make decisions rationally when you're not suffering a recent loss or make decisions for yourself. But we are here when families have suffered a loss as well.
Right.
You know, it's always better to have a place to lay your head than not to. You don't want to, people don't want to think about that time. But if you buy it now, it's cheaper than 100 years from now when you're going to need it.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned a lot of people don't like to think about death and their own mortality or anyone's mortality.
Right.
Um, but it is a natural occurrence in
It is.
life. And so how I guess I'm 50. So when would you recommend people would start making, I guess, or thinking about these type of arrangements for themselves or even for their parents?
You know, people die at all ages.
Yeah,
We bury
absolutely.
babies all the way up to 20-year-olds to 100-year-olds. We had a lady last year who was 113.
Oh,
She lived a great life.
that is that is wonderful.
Yeah. But I think that we all have to face our mortality at some point.
Yeah,
And so I think that if you know where you want to be buried, or if you have an idea, maybe you have a family history, we have a lot of families that have family at Southview and they want to be
yeah,
buried at Southview. It's never too early to start thinking about that and making your arrangements about that.
okay,
People say, don't just tell somebody, write your will and think about the things that you have and the things that you want to go to people that you love if you should die tomorrow.
yeah,
And also, it just really helps who you leave behind. If you were to pass tomorrow, it would be a crushing blow to everybody who depends on you, cares about you, loves you, and to
absolutely.
kind of soften that blow. If you've made your own arrangements, if you've already paid for something in advance, then it makes it that much easier for your family to accept.
Okay.
Yeah. We always
Um,
say it's another way of loving your family to prepare. I had a really good friend who died suddenly when we were in our 40s. He got on an airplane and, you know, didn't get off the airplane. But
wow. Sorry to hear that.
he hadn't planned ahead. And
Right.
so we had to pass a basket around to help bury him. And I know that's not what he wanted. You
Right.
know, I know that's not what he had in mind, but he thought he had more time. We just never know what day or time it's going to be, but we know it's coming.
That's very true. That's the one thing we do know. It's coming. So
It's as natural as birth.
yeah, yeah. So your advice is to plan for
Yeah,
it as early as possible.
right.
Could you give the website and repeat the phone number and then speak about pre-needs again? You mentioned pre-needs earlier.
Okay. Pre-need just means that you are buying property or buying a crypt in a mausoleum before it's needed. So it's pre-need, it's before need. So nobody has passed. You're
So you're
buying,
like paying on it?
huh?
You're like paying on it?
Sure, you can have a contract and pay on it, and purchase what you want to purchase, and you can make those decisions for yourself. The
Okay.
worst thing is to have a family come out here and I have to go and sell them a grave. I have to say, you want this one or you want this one, knowing they don't want any of them, you know. And if,
Valid point. Valid
right.
point.
But if you go and select a space for yourself, you don't have to have one daughter saying, well, daddy didn't want this one, or daddy would have rather this. Well, he told me, and that's what we hear. It causes conflict in families that can
Right.
be avoided if the person just makes their own decisions.
And, and in that regards, it's just as important as having a will because
It is.
okay, that gives it some more perspective.
Yeah. Excuse me one
Just as
second.
important as having a will. Okay,
Yeah, it's important to have a will, not just, I think there's a commercial out now that says, somebody says, when I die, you can have this car. And then the man comes out from the will company and says, nope, that doesn't work. You can't just tell them that, you have to write it down. But that's true.
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Because we've had families here that it caused discourse between two sisters that didn't speak anymore after that because one thought mama wanted this, the other one thought mama wanted that. What she told me, what she said, well, she may have changed her mind.
Yeah,
So
that's unfortunate.
the fewer decisions and the fewer decisions that a family has to make at a time of grief, I think the easier it is for them to continue on in the manner that, you've raised them to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What was the number in the website? The phone number in the website again?
The phone number is 404-622-5393. And the website is www.southviewcemetery.com.
Cemetery.com.
Right, cemetery has all E's in it. I found out cemetery is one of the most misspelled words in the English language. It's not A-R-Y, it's E-R-Y.
Oh,
Cemetery.
I sure put T-A-R-Y. Look, I got 2 degrees.
I learned that watching Jeopardy.
You're never too old to learn, ladies and gentlemen. Never too old to learn. So
Yeah.
www.southviewcemetery, cemetery.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to make sure we talk about the tour that we're having on March 15th. It's going to be at 4:30. It's a Saturday afternoon, and it'll probably be an hour tour. March is Women's History Month. And so we are going to focus on women's history because it's not always documented that well. But we are going to have 4 of those storytellers from the Kayumba Storyteller Group come out, and they've learned scripts about 4 significant women who are buried here. One is Jewel Simon, who was an artist. She studied under Hale Woodruff, and she was an artist in Atlanta. Another one is Vaseline Usher. I mentioned the middle school is named for her. She was an educator, and she also helped with Jack and Jill. I'm sorry, not Jack and Jill. She helped with Girl Scouts.
Okay.
And we will have some Girl Scouts here presenting on some other women that they are choosing to talk about. We're gonna have a woman stand in the place of Lizzie McDuffie.
Okay.
She was a White House maid and also an advocate for African Americans during the FDR administration, the Roosevelt administration.
Okay.
And Donna Watts Pace, who happens to be my Aunt Donna. She was the sister of the founder, Albert Watts, my great-grandfather.
Okay.
But she was an educator and went to Covington, Georgia, and found a need there for an orphanage. And so she ran an orphanage in Covington for many, many years. They serviced over 700 young Black men, girls and boys, and helped them have a stable home life.
Okay.
She also started a Sunday school group on Fraser Street in Summerhill that ended up being a church. And
Okay.
the church is celebrating its 160th anniversary this year. It's called Paradise Baptist Church. No, yeah, Paradise Missionary Baptist Church.
Where is that located?
It's on Bankhead Highway. Um,
Okay.
the minister is Reverend Charles Harper, and they are celebrating their 160th anniversary this year.
So much rich history in Atlanta.
It is.
And I know one of the church you mentioned earlier, Friendship Baptist Church, was one of the first Black churches in Atlanta.
Right, yeah. Friendship was the mother of everything.
Yeah.
Friendship and Big Bethel.
Big Bethel. Yep, that was
Yeah.
the other one. Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, this is absolutely wonderful. I'm loving this history lesson that you give here today on Conversation Education. What are the tour date? The date was March 15th, right?
Yeah, Saturday, March 15th at 4:30, and it'll probably run to about probably 6:30. It's a 1 hour tour, but we'll have waves of people coming in. And it's through the Atlanta Preservation Center. In
Okay.
Atlanta, they have, I think, over 100 tours now that are all free. And it's a 3-week period at the end of February and 1st of March that they offer these free tours at the Atlanta Preservation Center.
Okay. Excellent. That is absolutely wonderful. So Saturday, March 15th at 4:30 p.m. will be
Yeah,
the
please come out. It's free. You'll learn some history and have some interesting conversations with some new people. Meet
okay.
somebody and get a different perspective, perhaps.
Absolutely. We all like free stuff. It's
Yeah,
free
it's
and we
free.
get educated.
Come on out.
I absolutely love it. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. All right. And so you have that tour in March, and then you said the other tour will be in September sometime.
Right, September 20th, I believe. The race massacre occurred September 21st. I think it was 3 days. It was in September, in the September 20th, September
Yeah.
21st period. So we usually try to have that tour focused on the Atlanta race massacre.
Okay. Okay. And here I thought cemeteries were just for burial. You can go get all type of history lessons and everything. And it's
Yeah.
pretty big. It's a pretty big cemetery. I know I didn't even see half of it, but it's a pretty large area.
Yeah, we're over 100 acres. But the tour won't be that challenging. We used to go to the actual grave sites of the individuals, which was kind of up and down hills. And we had some complaints about it being too challenging of a
Yeah.
walk. So we try to keep it on a straightaway. And you can certainly go and visit the grave site if you want to, but you don't have to walk that far or on that kind of terrain
Okay.
to see the actresses,
Okay.
the
And
portrayals.
at some point, weren't you all getting a new mausoleum?
Right, it's being built now. We
Okay.
hopefully it'll be opened up in April. Kind of had a delay with the snow and the rain and the wind, but
Okay.
yeah, it is probably halfway constructed. We expected it to be open at the end of March, but I think it's going to be pushed back to April.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully in time for our anniversary.
And when is the anniversary?
It's April 21st. Yeah,
April
that's our
21st.
charter day.
And which anniversary is it going to be?
It's 139.
139.
Yeah, so next year we're going to do something big on the 140th. I hope you'll come.
I sure will.
Oh,
I absolutely will. Thank you for giving me a year's notice. I
there you
appreciate
go.
that. I can plan for it
And all
properly.
of your audience, everybody's welcome to come. Not sure what we're gonna do, but it's gonna be something big. 140 years.
Okay, okay. So, conversations in education audience, we have some things on our calendar. We have the women's tour coming up Saturday, March 15th at 4 p.m. Then the Atlanta Race Massacre, 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre tour will be mid
September
to
20th.
September,
Mhm.
September. And then the 140-year anniversary next April 21st.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'll make sure I put all of that on my calendar.
All right, we look forward to seeing you. The
Um,
community really does support Southview in lots of different ways, and we appreciate that support. Like
absolutely,
when we
absolutely.
buried John Lewis, I had many people call me and say, "Oh, we're so proud of our cemetery. We're so proud," and it just warms my heart because
Yeah,
it is our cemetery. It's our
yeah,
community.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's beautiful that it's even a communal feel to South
Mhm.
like that. I absolutely love it. And so we're almost out of time. And I want to thank you for coming on, giving such a wonderful history lesson of Southview. And thank you to the wonderful job the family has done in preserving this historical Black site. It is greatly appreciated. Um,
Well, thank you, Vincent, for having us. And maybe some people who never heard of Southview have heard of us now. And we'll reach out and look at our website and see, what a beautiful place we work to make it to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're doing a great job of keeping it
Thank
informed
you.
of everything. So before you go, can you please tell us about the Historic Southview Preservation Foundation?
Right. So in 2004, some interested people some of them were interested in history, others had family buried here, decided to come together. The oldest part of the cemetery is non-perpetual care, which means that there was no money set aside in a trust fund to maintain that area. We
Okay,
maintain it by cutting and keeping the weeds down and mowing it, but it deserves more care than that. And there was
okay,
just no money placed aside. When you buy a cemetery plot today, a portion of that money goes into a fund. But back then, they didn't have the idea that a company would take care of the grave sites. So it is a 501c3 corporation, and it has a board of directors that directs it, but it maintains the non-perpetual care area of the cemetery.
okay. Now, is there any responsibility on the families to kind of help keep up their family members' area or anything?
Sure, but a lot of those families from 1886 and the early 1900s, they may have moved from Atlanta, they may have died out. So it's an onus on us, on the foundation, to maintain those areas. It's really our treasure. It's our diamond in the rough, and that's why it's so important for it to be maintained well. We're really trying to raise money now so that we can clean the marble monuments and restore them back to their former beauty. Um,
Okay.
and so any donations we are certainly appreciative of and certainly will accept.
And they can make donations through the Historic Southview Preservation Fund.
Yeah, they can call the same number as the cemetery and say that they want to make a donation to the foundation. The
Okay.
foundation president is Candy Dobbs Outlaw, and she will be excited to talk to you about the Historic Preservation Foundation and the work that they're doing.
Okay. Excellent. So one more question. Do you accept life insurance? And is there an upcharge because it's such a historical site?
No. We know the community that we serve, and we want to continue to respect and serve that community. And the families have been very loyal to us, so we try to keep our prices, easily manageable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's excellent. That's good to hear. All right. Thank you, Ms. Winifred Hemphill, for joining me today on Conversation and Education on WCEG Network. It has been a pleasure to have you on. You gave a lot of excellent
The pleasure's
historical.
all mine, Vincent. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Oh, one more question just came in. How would
Okay.
one buy stock in a cemetery without buying a grave? Okay.
The two aren't really related. You don't have to have a grave to buy a share of stock. We don't have any shares of stock available to purchase right now.
Okay.
It's a closely held family corporation. But if they're interested, I can certainly raise that to the board and might be something we do it, not too long from now. So if they're
Okay.
interested in buying stock, they can call and talk to me.
That same number, 404-622-5393, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
All righty. Thank you very much. Miss Winifred Hemphill, it has been wonderful. You are a repository of historical wealth yourself. And
Well, thank you.
it has been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep up the great work with this historical site in the community.
And you too. Keep up the great work of educating our families.
Thank you. And before we go, I have to do my Scholar of the Week. Week. My scholars this week are Kendall, Kobe, and Sydney Belcher, who graduated from Ola High School a few years ago in McDonough, Georgia, with 4.0 GPAs in summa cum
Woo!
laude honors. That is amazing for three triplets to do that together. It says Sydney pursued nursing at Georgia State University with the goal of working in the hematology oncology department of a children's hospital. Kobe pursued marketing at Georgia State University, and Kendall pursued financial services at Gordon State College. So once again, congrats to Kendall, Kobe, and Sydney Belcher for being three triplets who all got 4.0 GPAs. I don't even know how that.
Awesome. Congratulations, mom and dad.
Yes, congratulations to the entire family. With that being said, I will see you all next month. Thank you to our listening audience for continuing to support our programming and our shows. And until next month, peace and blessings.